Alrighty, everybody. Looks like it is 11 and it should be time for us to get started here today. Before we go ahead and jump in, if anybody in the chat could please give me a confirmation if my audio is coming through fine. Just want to make sure that y'all can hear me perfectly clear before we get started today. And for anybody in the chat, please feel free to also let me know where you are listening in from today. I always love to make these an interactive session, and I want you to be walking away from here with some really good knowledge, context, and information today. So please, I really encourage you to ask questions as we go along. If there's something I'm talking about that's going over your head a little bit, we need to take a step back, re-explain it, please let me know, as ultimately I want to be here for you in your education here today. But we will be getting started in a brief second here. Just give it a couple quick more minutes for people to pile in. But again, anybody in the chat, if my audio is coming through properly, please let me know. I think we should be all set here today. Perfect, everybody. So to just give a brief introduction, my name is Sam Jameson with the Eventbrite Boost team here. I have been teaching people digital marketing from all different kinds of events, all different sizes of events over the last 4 years, really helping people hone in on their digital strategy to best use the power of digital marketing to sell out their events, have attractions for new events, bring people a little bit louder. Okay, perfect. Let me just bring that a little bit closer. Or I can turn up the audio input a little bit. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the comment here today. So just to give you all a brief little agenda of what we're going to be talking about today. First, we're just going to be given a brief intro of, what exactly is Eventbrite Boost? Where can you find it? What is everything that's in it? Then we are going to be specifically today diving into the Facebook and Instagram marketing side of things. So we'll take a look at other successful campaigns that event promoters have done that fulfill basically all the best practices, helping show you how you can repeat these same types of campaigns for your events. And then we'll actually go through a live demo showing you how to create these. And I always love making that part interactive, so I'll need your help to get a little bit of inspiration of, what types of events are you throwing, just so I could make this a little bit more specific for you, so you could be walking away with a good takeaway of, how might I even market my own events at the end of the day. But diving in here, first and foremost, I feel like event marketing is really tough for a lot of us, and it ultimately doesn't have to be. I really empathize with a lot of you that might be, taking the deep dive into digital marketing. It's really complicated. It feels stressful, as I was there myself. For a little context, I actually started basically using this same platform around 4 years ago in a venue up in the Berkeley area, in Berkeley, California, and I was running all of their marketing campaigns through this platform. And I remember when I kind of first jumped in the seat, I felt a lot of pressure on me. It was kind of difficult initially, but ultimately what I really wanted to know when I was learning this was, what's the why? Why would I essentially be doing these things? Not what is the what of what I would be doing, but what's the context behind why I would actually be choosing to do this. So I really want to make sure that I'm helping get the why across to some of you, as I know many of you here in the chat today probably ultimately want to know, why should I even do these things? And Andork Nomad, hi from Halifax. Thank you very much for your comment. I hope you're having yourself a lovely day, and thank you so much for spending your time with us. So ultimately, I think a lot of times, why event marketing can feel kind of tough is many of us are working with limited budgets. It'd be amazing if we had $1 million that we could just throw behind our event, but that's not the reality that many of us live in. We're oftentimes working with kind of pre-designated budget amounts, really just trying to get the best effectiveness for the dollars that we're spending here on marketing. And a couple of the common reasons that we found, or personally that I thought of, why event marketing seems very difficult is, first and foremost, a lot of the tools either feel too complex or too expensive. They feel like they were built with somebody, for somebody with a, Harvard MBA working over at Coca-Cola with, $2 billion worth of advertising budget that you can be spending there, where that's not the situation many of us find ourselves in. And then ultimately, us as event creators, we fulfill so many different hats. We have so many different things, that aren't in our job description that we effectively do every single day. So it can be really tough for us to actually designate a lot of time to learn brand new skills or adopt all this, even if we ultimately wanted to do something like taking Facebook's blueprint to learn more. And then lastly, functionality and reporting a lot of times is segmented. Even if we get our feet wet, we get in there and we actually start creating campaigns, a lot of times it feels like we might not have a good understanding of, how our ad dollars actually translating to something beneficial for what we're doing. So what we've tried to accomplish with Eventbrite Boost is take a combination of both free and paid monthly subscription marketing tools, combine it into one place, so that basically you have a one-stop shop for anything that you need to be doing to promote your event, regardless of the budgets that you're working with, regardless of the event that you're working with. So many of you Eventbrite creators that have been with the platform for a long time, you might have been using some of the other features. Just want to let you know where you can even find this within the platform. So if you are in the Manage My Event section, you'll simply want to look for the Marketing tab up in the top left-hand corner. Go ahead and click on Marketing here, and you'll find the various features of Eventbrite Boost. Today, for a little bit of clarification, we're specifically going to be focusing on the Facebook and Instagram ad tools, but I want to give all of you a little bit of context on some of the other tools in here as well if you're not using them, to kind of let you know why you should be using them. So ultimately, if there's any good takeaway I could give you today, if you're just looking for an awesome free way to help promote your events, I would highly recommend and encourage use the Add Your Event to Facebook tool within the platform. Facebook events are really, really impactful nowadays because the way that Facebook events work is basically if you publish your Eventbrite event over to Facebook using this feature, first and foremost, users on Facebook are really easily able to purchase tickets directly within the Facebook event. So it's a pretty frictionless process. They come across your event, they hit a get tickets button, and they can purchase. But especially kind of coming over this last year of COVID, where people are still coming out to events at their own speed for how they feel comfortable, Facebook events are an awesome way that you can basically grow your attendance, grow people interested, and the more traction that you basically get organically on that Facebook event, Facebook is going to help promote that event to new people. So it's kind of a great way that even if you don't want to spend any dollars on marketing or ultimately might want to do that down the road, another really powerful tool is to actually help promote your Facebook event. And that's one of the most common best practices we see many event marketers running now. So I'd highly recommend, if you're not doing it, just start publishing your Eventbrite events that you create to Facebook using the Add Your Event to Facebook tool. And then anybody that also hits interested or going is now remarketable for up to a year. So it's really easy to kind of grow these hyper targeted audiences of people that have the greatest purchase or registration intent for your upcoming events. So again, any takeaway, guys, I just recommend get started with the Add Your Event to Facebook. If you're not already using it, totally free, only takes like a minute or two to publish, but then you're going to get a lot of powerful information that'll help set you up if you want to run successful ads down the road as well. So how to access that Add Your Event to Facebook? Fantastic question, my friend. So you'll find that within the Marketing tab up here. So if you are in Eventbrite, you normally hover over that top right-hand corner and go to the Manage My Event section, and then that Marketing tab should be showing up there. It might not be rolled out in your region depending on where you are watching and here. I know we're rolling out kind of temporarily over time, so if it's not here, just keep a lookout. This probably should be rolling out in your area. Awesome. And then skipping to the next section, this is the simple send an email campaign function. This is one of Eventbrite's most commonly leveraged features, basically a free tool for email marketing to help notify your past purchasers or your prospects about your upcoming events. UK, I think it should be out in the UK, so I can help probably find a link for you too as well that'll take you to that section, but normally it should be within that Marketing tab. But I appreciate you messaging in the chat to let us know about that too. So getting back to the send an email campaign function, within this section, just a free way that you can be notifying your other past purchasers or prospects about your upcoming events, making customizable emails. Normally, when you're combining a tool like Facebook or Instagram, promoting your events there, and individuals are also seeing these upcoming events via email marketing, normally they're have a substantial higher likelihood to purchase or register for your event if they're seeing it through a multitude of a few different channels. So I'd highly recommend to, we won't spend much time on it today, but start leveraging the email campaign function if you haven't already, as normally from what we found, it's also the people that have purchased from you in the past that have the highest likelihood to actually purchase or register for your events in the future. But what we're going to be focusing on today is specifically how can we use Facebook and Instagram advertising to help get our event in front of people, help notify them about it, and then ultimately have them purchase or convert at the end of the day. So that will be our focus today. So let's just go ahead and jump over to it. And kind of as we go through the setup process, everybody, what we will want to be doing here is I want this to be interactive. So please feel free to ask me questions that you have on these topics. I want to make sure that you're getting some good information out of these today. But as we are getting started here as well, please feel free to let me know. I'd love to know what types of events many of you in the chat are throwing, just so as we actually go in mind to a specific example, I'm kind of taking all the different types of events that you're throwing into account to give something that should hopefully help you a little bit more at the end of the day. But what we are going to be doing first here is let's go ahead and pull up one of these very, very successful campaigns that one of our customers had ran. Oh, so we got festivals. Gerald, what type of festival are you throwing, by the way? Is it a beer festival, a music festival? Would love a little bit more context as well. Context is always key. Indie music concert, awesome. So we got a couple different concerts, we got festivals. We normally have a few yoga folks in here too as well. So feel free any point down the road chime in. Cool, 1,000 to 5,000 cap. Awesome. So now we should be pulling up an example of one of a very successful campaign ran by one of our customers, Cream Events, out in New Zealand. This campaign was ran a couple months back, as New Zealand for a period of time was one of the only places in the world that was actively throwing festivals or having events. So this is a really good example of a campaign and kind of showing you what kind of metrics would you even see if you ran a campaign within this platform. So kind of comparatively, normally when you run campaigns in Ads Manager and all you see is click-based information, various things like this, we've really tried to design our platform as kind of a streamlined version of Facebook's ad platform with built-in automation that'll help you get better bang for the buck, help you better understand how your ad dollars are actually translating to results for your business. And this is kind of an example of what you might see if you run a campaign here in this platform. So normally if you are kind of have your revenue tracking things in place within here, we'll normally try to show you, for how much you actually spent on this ad, how much did you make back in ticket sales. So right here, we're actually looking at a campaign this user was promoting to promote one of their upcoming festivals here. And this was specifically a Facebook event RSVP campaign. So, why I'd been going on and on about those various Facebook events is if you actually use that free tool to publish your event to Facebook, you then, if you want to take it a step further, can actually help promote and advertise that Facebook event. And we'll go in a little bit more context about why those are really important, but just wanted to show you that this campaign actually kind of the main objective here was actually getting people to RSVP. So, this campaign that they had right here, they spent around 275 and they actually got around over 500 RSVPs. And the reason why these are important is anybody that RSVPs to the event can be remarketed to later down the road at a time where they might be more likely to purchase. Additionally, it just helps give Facebook more data to promote that event to new people, and we can always remarket to these individuals. So this campaign also, due to the kind of button within the Facebook event that made it really accessible for people to purchase, we actually did see a lot of sales coming from this. So I really like a lot of the Facebook RSVP or event ads as basically you could think of it as the best of both worlds between driving sales for those that are ready to purchase, but helping build social proof and engagement and remarketing audiences for the people that might not necessarily be ready to purchase. And we always try to give you a breakdown of, how many people did your campaign reach? How did you increase the size of your target audience based on how people interacted? And based on, some of the automation, we do have what is our own proprietary budget optimization. Big fancy word for basically saying we're going to help make you a better return for whatever type of campaign you're running compared to if you ran this in Ads Manager. Based on hundreds of thousands of event campaigns that we've had ran within our platform, we figured out what audiences are more likely to purchase at any given time. And instead of you needing to do a lot of manual optimization for your campaigns, our system automatically shifts budget from the bad performing audiences to the better performing ones. So you could kind of think about it as somebody that might manage your stock portfolio. If one stock's doing really bad, they might allocate that budget over to another stock that's actually performing substantially higher. So basically, we also try to show you, how much time might be saving you from an optimization perspective. For those of you that are a little bit more advanced too and love to dive into the data, we also give you a breakdown of, all the different target audiences that you choose to run your campaigns. And we have some really cool, unique ones to Eventbrite as well, and basically showing you, what audiences got the brunt of the budget, how did these actually translate to purchases, etc. So we've really tried to design this UI in a way that, makes a lot more sense for the types of campaigns that you are throwing for events. But just kind of briefly kind of covering, some of the really good things that this promoter ended up doing here. They were running the right type of campaign based on where they were in their ticketing cycle. That normally is one of the most important things that you could do, and we'll go into detail in there in a little bit. They were also doing a really good job of having a nice clean graphic here within this section. They were kind of diversifying the audiences that they were targeting, so they weren't putting it all in one basket. So those are kind of the main points of what drives a successful campaign. So let's actually go ahead and dive into showing you all how to create these campaigns. And everybody, thank you for leaving me a couple examples as well. We're definitely going to use some music festivals and concerts here in our examples of what we are running. So normally when you hop into this platform for the first time, you're going to see this kind of interesting looking like orange graph right here. And I just want to give you some clarification on what this is this is actually an amazing tool to really help automate a lot of the hard decision making processes that we sometimes need to make when we're running a campaign for our events. So basically what we've done here, we call this the sales curve, and this is basically a plot of how you on average your customers actually purchase for your events. Literally half the battle, guys, sometimes is just figuring out, what's the right type of campaign to run based on how my customers are purchasing. So we've created this really cool tool that you can simply choose any upcoming Eventbrite event that you want to advertise, and based on how your customers normally purchase, we'll actually recommend the campaign type that we think you should run, trying to eliminate kind of half that battle for you. So let's just go ahead and we'll choose my event here. This is kind of in that last period, and I can see that, I get a good amount of purchases or registrations here. So this recommended, we should maybe run an ad sending people straight to our Eventbrite ticketing page. So we can go ahead and hit get started here. So we'll always have a recommended option, but I also want you to walk away from here with some context of, why we recommend what we recommend. So we'll give you a little breakdown here, but if you ever want to customize this, feel free to click this customize option right here. And normally the main types of campaigns that you guys would probably run, this option right here that says get people to buy tickets on your website, for any of you that are familiar with the Facebook lingo or have heard something like a link click or conversion ad before, this is the exact same thing. It's fancy talk for basically just saying we're running an ad that drives people straight to your ticketing page or your main website. And normally, y'all, these are the best types of campaign to be running if you are in a period where your customers actually have a lot of urgency to purchase. Let's just put ourselves, you always want to be putting yourself in your buyer's shoes, trying to think and empathize, when might they actually be purchasing? Let's say, for example, we got a, music festival maybe 4 months out. I don't know how the weather is going to be. There are no price hike increases. I'm not worried if it's going to sell out. I honestly might wait a little bit later on down the road, a couple more months, and maybe not click on that ad right away. So depending on where you are in your cycle, it might be better to actually run something like an RSVP campaign. Think of these as kind of the best of both worlds in a lot of cases, as if you're using that add to Facebook feature, it's really easy for people to purchase. And as we saw from that last campaign example, advertising a Facebook event, we actually did see a good handful of people purchasing from that. But at the very least, we kind of grew a potential audience pool of another 500 plus individuals that were interested in our event that we could probably market to maybe a couple months later down the road when people are more likely to purchase. So just to keep it simple, you're normally running one of two options. If you know you're in a period where your customers are really likely to purchase, there's urgency, you can run an ad going straight to your ticketing pages. Or if you're not in that period, you might want to try something like a Facebook event, as it's kind of the best of both worlds here. But let's just roll with an example where we choose, our upcoming Eventbrite event here and then hit continue. Within this next step, we are simply choosing how we want to pay for this campaign. So if you've ran Facebook ad campaigns before, you'll kind of be familiar that you pay and finance your campaign with whatever card is hooked up to your Facebook ad account. Exactly works the exact same way within our platform. So you're simply choosing, what's the ad account that we want to pay for the campaign with. But we put a $100 budget. That $100 would get billed to whatever card is on file for the ad account. And then we're simply choosing, what's the Facebook or Instagram pages that we'd want our ad to run from. And then if you know what a Facebook pixel is and have multiple, you can always choose which one you want installed. If you don't know what it is, don't even worry about it, as we'll handle all that automatically for you. It's basically just a tracking and remarketing mechanism that actually isn't as effective as it used to be, and we can talk more about that later if any of you have questions on it. So simply to recap, all we're doing is what's the ad account we want to pay for, and then what's the page, what's the Instagram, hit continue, and then we are all set. And normally in this section, we're going to be pulling in the location of your Eventbrite event if you selected that. In this case, if the box is left blank, it's targeting the US by default, and my kind of event location, since it was online, was just set to the US, so blank by default here. But let's say, for example, we wanted to include like a city or a neighborhood or something to target. Simply just type out anything that you would like to hit in this section, and you can always add in multiple locations to the box here. And down towards the bottom, kind of think of this as like a lower bound for the age range. So, if your venue that you're throwing it in is only 18 and up or 21 and up, all ages, really easy to select the lower bound. You honestly don't really need to worry too much about kind of configuring that upper bound, as Facebook does a wicked job of actually figuring that out for you. And I figured that out the hard way after spending around $100,000 on ads, A/B testing stuff, and there wasn't much difference. Facebook is the intelligent being at the end of the day here. So once we've kind of set up the location targeting, and we've also set up, what's kind of the lower bound for the age range, this is where we will go to build the target audiences in our campaign. Now, the nice thing about this is, when you are building these the first time, it might take you a little bit, but odds are you're probably throwing very similar types of events. So once you kind of find a mix that works well for you, you don't really need to reinvent the wheel, and we can pretty much just duplicate your past campaigns, probably cutting the amount of time it takes you to build this in half or more. So normally the most common type of targeting, if any of you have built campaigns on Facebook before, is what's called interest, demographic, or behavior targeting. Our music festival example that we have in here, like feel free to put in like a couple artists too, like big artists of the genre that you might be throwing at in this section, just for a little bit of inspiration for me. But basically, normally what we're doing here in this section is we're just entering in a couple interests related to our event. So let's just say, for example, we were rolling with a music festival example. We might just go ahead in here and type out music festival and kind of see, what related music festival interests could we potentially target. So you can't actually target everything under the sun when it comes to Facebook interest targeting, but let's just see if music festivals is available. Perfect. So normally all that we're doing here is we're just typing out, what are a couple different types of events, and thank you very much for putting a couple extra in there. If we also have any like non-concert or non-music folks in the chat throwing events, please feel free to let me know what types of events you're throwing so we can get you a little bit of we can get you some feedback here in this section as well. But Gerald, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So normally in this section, what we're doing is we're typing out a couple different, related interests here in this section or demographics. Maybe let's say we wanted to add in a couple of our competitors' music festivals or something like that if they were targeted. Normally all we're doing is we're kind of entering in a couple interests, and then you could actually use this drop down to see, what are some other similar things that Facebook might recommend in this section. So, we could add in concerts, we could add in nightclubs, we could maybe add in the genre of music. But for those of you that are actually throwing, concerts, normally what we do and what I used to do back in the day when I was running all of my concert ads is a lot of times we're not necessarily targeting people interested in music festivals. We're targeting people interested in the type of music or similar artists to the ones that we are marketing. Um, so what I used to do back in the day is maybe let's just say, for example, it was like Jay-Z or something like that coming to my venue. I'd go to Google or go to Spotify, write down a list of maybe like 50 different similar artists to Jay-Z, and then I'd go ahead and literally enter them in one by one by one, and then I'd find I couldn't even hit like 75% of them in the first place. So it like took me like 15 to 20 minutes just to kind of build my interest audience. We actually built a tool that'll automate that whole process for you. And the way that this works is we basically connect to data from Spotify. So let's just take Jay-Z for an example. If we type out Jay-Z, let's see who the first J is that appears, and it is Jay-Z. Instead of you having to write down all these interests, then kind of manually populate them, all you have to do is just hit Jay-Z or enter in that artist, and then what our system's going to do is it'll check what are the related artists to Jay-Z on Spotify, and which ones of those artists can be targeted on Facebook or Instagram as interests. So you can see here, kind of just by typing in Jay-Z here, we pulled in all the related artists that could be targeting here. So and you can always add in more. So if we wanted to also enter in Mary J. Blige here as well, you're not limited to kind of any number that you could put in here. So we've really tried to build this out as a shortcut to kind of help you build these interest audiences, especially if you're working with music. It can be a little bit more tedious. For most of you, just within like the yoga spaces or kind of any normal events, you're simply entering in regular interests. And then like Gerald, what you might do here in this section is you can always enter in a couple more genres of music. So let's just say, for example, if we wanted to add in like hip hop and rap or R&B as like a genre or something like that, you could always type things in here and add things in yourself here in this section. So what I used to do back in the day was I'd kind of enter in, what are a bunch of artists up in this top box, kind of generates the interest for me, and then I might enter in like an interest or two manually in this section. There isn't a right number. You just kind of want to make sure that you have like a decently sized audience. And if we were targeting somewhere in like the LA or Miami area or something like that with a bunch of these interests, we probably have a couple million people within the size of this audience. So that pretty much covers the interest audience, guys. I just wanted to take a brief pause. Did anybody have any questions on kind of what's going on here with interest targeting? It's basically just a way that we can help attract new people that probably aren't necessarily familiar with your events in your business, but might be interested in various related topics that kind of have crossover with your event, or the different types of artists or genre of music that you might be marketing if you're kind of doing like a concert or event type campaign. And if it looks like I'm looking away, it's because I'm looking at the chat. So sorry for the, the little weirdness there today. So once we've done that, Basically, one of the unique parts of Eventbrite Boost that we have here is I feel like for a lot of us when we kind of hop into somewhere like Ads Manager, a lot of the most powerful audiences that we could potentially target kind of live in a maze that we have to go elsewhere to find. Like let's say for example, if we wanted to remarket to people that interact with our Facebook events or our past purchasers on Eventbrite or people that interact with us on Instagram. Normally you're going to a separate spot to go build that audience, and then you have to figure out this complicated way of incorporating that audience into your campaign. We've really tried to build it so it's almost an automated process. So without you even having to do anything, we're automatically including an audience of people that interact with you on Facebook and your Facebook events. So let's say, for example, in that past example, that person ran an RSVP campaign. They got another probably 1,000+ people to just visit their Facebook events. We're automatically including an audience that'll help you remarket to those people. But if you also have an Instagram, it specifically has to be what's called an Instagram business account. But if you basically have one of those, you can really easily choose any Instagram pages you have access to also market to people that visit your profile or interact with your organic or ad content on Instagram. And then if you have that pixel that we kind of automatically install on your Eventbrite site, or you might have it on your website, just for remarketing purposes, you could really easily incorporate it in this section as well. So we kind of actually have two different versions of the targeting interface. And we got one in here, how to create a ticket that will automatically be redirect to a Google Meet link automatically. So Nesmo, basically there are a couple things that you could do. I think you might be referring to specifically within Eventbrite right here. I could probably get you a little bit more context on that. I'm not as familiar with at least the event creation side within Eventbrite myself. That is kind of not my area of expertise, but I remember when I did kind of this link that I had right here that sent to a YouTube live link, you normally, I think when you're setting up the event in Eventbrite, should have a box that you could basically just enter in you could enter in the link to that Google Meet, or you could do something where you maybe build like a smart link of that link to the Google Meet and kind of have that as like the URL for, or you might send people to for like an ad campaign or within your Eventbrite as well. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Not entirely sure off the top of my head. I could maybe take a look a little later just to be have a little extra time to kind of see, how did I set up this Eventbrite event as well. But getting back to the target audience section, guys, here, we also do have a version called the advanced targeting for those of you that kind of want to take it a step further and want a little bit more customization, or like already a Facebook advertising pro and you're like, Sam, how do I use all these lookalikes or fancy audiences that might be unique to Boost? So what we basically had here was, we had that interest audience that we were talking about. We're kind of looking at the exact same audiences, just in a view here that lets us get a little more configured. So we can kind of see, Jay-Z, Nas, all the other interests that we had here in this section kind of still pulled in here. We had that LA targeting, but down towards the bottom, this section gives you more control that, we could choose, do we want to run this only on Instagram stories, or do we want to run this on Facebook, Instagram streams, etc. of what we have here. And this was the group remarketing audience that we were talking about. Now, I want to show you kind of a couple cool, unique audiences to Eventbrite. So if you actually have what's called a Facebook Business Manager account, you can kind of think of that, guys, if you don't know what that is almost like a folder that you can take all the different things you work with for Facebook advertising and just keep it nicely organized within Facebook. They kind of made it required a little while back to use some of the more powerful types of audiences. But if you actually already have one of those set up, if you build a campaign, we'll actually in that audience that helps market to basically your page engagers, event engagers, pixel traffic, etc., will also include basically the list of all your past purchasers. And for those of you that are like, how exactly does that work? Basically, if somebody's email that they use to purchase for one of your events matches up to a Facebook or Instagram account, you can actually remarket to them. And from what we've seen from a data perspective, it's by far the best potential audience that you could use. It's the one that has the highest return for every dollar actually spent on marketing to that audience. And we know that people that actually really like your events are generally substantially more likely to attend again. So you could kind of think of this audience right here as just we're putting everybody that maybe has the highest purchase intent, consolidating them into one nice and easy audience. But if I were to be, hypercritical of what I've got going on here, it's almost like I'm kind of putting all my eggs in one basket. I only have this one interest audience going after new people, and if it doesn't do well, I don't really have another audience that our system could shift budget over to that's fulfilling that same purpose. So many of you might have heard of something called a lookalike on Facebook before. If any of you are familiar with that meme of the two Spider-Mans pointing at each other, that's basically the exact same thing that's going on here. And the way that works is basically what's going on Retro format. Can you show how to locate the page that you are on? So whenever you're in that campaign creation section, up towards the very top right, there should be a button that says like switch to simple or switch to advanced targeting. If you are within the simple view, you should be able to, so I'll go back to this section right here. You should be able to kind of scroll up to the top where it says switch to advanced targeting and then click this option. It should give you a little bit more customization here. But getting back to it, y'all, basically what a lookalike audience does is it helps you go after brand new people. You could kind of think about it as doing the same thing as an interest audience, but instead of you having to enter in all the data yourself, you're kind of giving Facebook a little bit of data. So like data on past purchasers or data people that interact with your events or your Facebook pages, and it spits you back a brand new audience of people in your area that it deems are very, very similar to those that were kind of in that initial pool. So generally, like the best type of lookalike that you could build is actually off your past purchaser data. So if you have a good amount of past purchaser data on Eventbrite, you could use this Eventbrite lookalike of past attendees, and it's basically helping build you an audience of people that are very similar to those that already bought from you in your area, and this would kind of help add a little bit more A/B testing to your campaign. So even if we were to roll with a mix like this, it's actually a really good audience mix. We kind of have this lookalike going after new people similar to those that bought in the past, and then we have this interest audience kind of doing a little bit of A/B testing, and then this remarketing audience is kind of covering all of our bases from, what could we effectively remarket to. So we really tried to build this system out in a way that, we have unique audiences like these. If you normally wanted to kind of build this lookalike, what you have to do is you'd have to like download your past buyer data from like Eventbrite or wherever you have it, upload it to Facebook, and then build a completely separate audience. All you're doing here is just adding in the option, choosing your Eventbrite organization, and then boom, we got that audience built for you. A couple cool other audiences. If any of you are MailChimp users, we also have this kind of same ability for you to target your MailChimp list or build lookalikes off of the list. So let's say we had 100,000 emails on our email list. We could choose this lookalike option, choose the list that we want to build. I don't really have many on my list here, but basically you could build a lookalike off of kind of your mailing list, which generally does pretty on par with like a lookalike of your past purchasers. You generally, guys, don't want to go too crazy with adding in a ton of audiences here, as ultimately your budget is split across all these audiences. And if we have, if we add in a crazy number of audiences here, not enough budget's going to each audience, that the audience really isn't reaching enough people, and Facebook's not really getting data on, what's working, what's not working, how can we better optimize it. So in all honesty, in most cases for the vast majority of people, you're probably working at max if you have bigger budgets around 5 audiences. If you have kind of lower budgets, you're probably working around like maybe 3 to 4 audiences. It's the only thing I'd recommend here is, if you have a little bit of better data, so like you have past purchaser data and things like that, you can kind of get in this section and incorporate some of these audiences. And we actually have something in the pipe right now that actually should be automating this within the next few months as well. So you might not even have to be making these decisions a little bit later down the road. And maybe if you didn't have a lot of data on past purchasers, but you made a lot of Facebook events, another reason why Facebook events are important is, let's say over the past 3 months we had 20,000 people visit our Facebook events. We could actually build a lookalike of the people that visited or interacted with our Facebook events to help us go after brand new people. So that's another reason why adding your event to Facebook is important, is any data that you get from any page engagement, event engagement, email data, you can ultimately use that data to help you go after new people that are very similar to those in that data pool initially. So, even if we roll with a mix like this would be a pretty perfect audience mix. We're kind of A/B testing like 3 audiences helping us go after new people, and then we have one audience kind of hitting like all our past purchasers, page engagers, pixel traffic, etc. So, y'all, just the main takeaway that I'd like you to walk away with today is, when you're building audiences in a campaign, just make sure, one, am I kind of covering all of my bases? So do I at least have one audience kind of going after new people, or do I have another audience that's helping doing remarketing? And ultimately, if you are in a period where maybe you only need to do remarketing, it's completely okay to maybe only have a campaign that has one of these audiences. But generally what we're doing is we're kind of having a balanced audience mix. We got another question here. What's the best way to leverage another person's account and their ticket purchasers with their permission, of course? So probably the best way to do that would actually be if you are able to get like an email list of those past purchasers. You can, in like this audience right here, it's Facebook custom audiences are like what all of these things are referred to, but when I kind of talk about it, it's normally like dealing with like past purchaser data or stuff like that. So let's say, for example, you got a list of, past purchaser data, 100,000 emails or something like that. You could go to this section and basically build a lookalike of that. So all you'd be doing is kind of adding in this like custom audience lookalike, and you could build a lookalike off of anything already in Facebook, or you could kind of hit this like plus upload an audience button right here to go ahead and upload that audience. And another thing to talk about when it comes to like, if you're working with your friend's festival or something like that, one of the really common ways, and Gerald, I'd recommend doing this if you haven't been doing this already, is if you're throwing like a music festival, or for some of our other friends in the chat as well that we're doing concerts, I'd recommend get access to the performing artist page. So request advertiser access to their page. As basically what you can do is you can select any other Facebook pages or Instagram accounts that you get access to. So let's say, for example, if you had an artist coming to perform at your festival, but that artist wasn't maybe big enough that we couldn't target them as an interest, but we still want to market to their fan base. If they granted you advertiser permissions to their Facebook page, you could include their Facebook page in one of these remarketing audiences to directly market to people that interact with their page or their Instagram. So that's another way, even if you're not working with like email data or anything like that, simply just requesting advertiser access to your sponsors or the artists that you end up working with is an amazing way to do that. And then you could also do lookalikes off that. So let's say, for example, you got access to Jay-Z's Facebook page. Jay-Z maybe had a bunch of Facebook events or something up. I don't know if he did. He's kind of under the radar nowadays. But let's say you got access to an artist that had a lot of different Facebook events or a sponsor. You could ultimately even build a lookalike off of their specific page or things like that as well. So hope that helped answer your question of like, how could you leverage other data from like your partners or anything like that. If it's like an email list, you'd probably want to just use this regular like custom audience lookalike. Go ahead and upload that and incorporate it. But then I'd also recommend something that's a little bit easier. Just request like page advertiser access to the people that you work with. And then you can, even though you're not technically running the ad from their page, like you can tell them like, hey, if you give me page advertiser access to your page, it opens up more opportunities for me from a targeting perspective to actually get the people that really care about this artist at the event, and we could sell it out. And normally when you explain it like that and you tell them like, I'm not running ads from your page, we're just using it for targeting, it's really generally okay with people and people understand. And the nice thing is, I have a lot of venues even out in Texas that have over the years gotten access to like thousands of artists' different Facebook pages, and they never got rid of them. So they ultimately have this library that they could almost make like genre-based audiences off of targeting the pages that they have access to. It's pretty crazy stuff, pretty advanced stuff, but just wanted to put it on your radar as it's kind of not common knowledge for everybody. And one of the really cool things about this system is we've really tried to design this that it's going to speed up the process for when you build future campaigns. So let's say, this mix for our festival or event that we're throwing, we are probably going to use this for the majority of everything else. Like, we probably don't need to reinvent the wheel every time we're building one of these audiences. You could actually save this as a set or even make it the default. So anytime you go to build a new campaign, you could automatically have these audiences show up. Maybe all you're doing is making a slight tweak to a couple interests or including like another page you have access to. But if it's working well, you probably don't need to reinvent the wheel. And you could also, maybe even if you forgot to save one, you could always pull in audiences from any past campaigns or drafts or anything that you made. So what I used to do back in the day when I was working in a concert venue, I basically would kind of use a similar mix like this. So I would generally hit like intros related to the artist. So all I would be doing is like kind of changing up the interests. Maybe the remarketing audience, I'd include like the artist page or any other relevant pages I had access to. And generally for something like a lookalike, maybe I wasn't even touching these last two audiences. So maybe instead of, what we did today, which maybe took us around, 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes because we were explaining it as well, maybe you're done with this section in like 30 seconds and then can move on to all the other stuff you need to do. So again, we really tried to build this in a way that as you build more campaigns, it might take you maybe 10 minutes to do it initially, but we find a lot of people can get it down to anywhere between like the 2 to 5 minute mark to actually build some of these ads. So before we jump from the audience section, just because personally this was the hardest section for me when I was learning, it's pretty much smooth sailing from here on out, everybody, but I just wanted to take a quick pause. Did anybody have any questions, any specific things for your events here for when it comes to like target audiences or anything I could better advise you for? Just wanted to take a quick little water break and pause to see if any of you had anything I could better explain here. Cool, and if it comes to you a little later, feel free to drop it in, but let's continue on here. So the next step after this is simply setting, what's the schedule and budget. We also do have a recommended section if you want to get like a recommended schedule and budget, but if you're somebody that wants to do this yourself, generally just the most important thing to contemplate is like, are my customers actually purchasing right now? And am I running that right type of campaign objective? And am I saving budget to even advertising periods where people might be more likely to purchase? So kind of going back to those like graph examples, if we were advertising in a spot where nobody generally purchases for our event, we wouldn't want to blow 80% of our budget in that period as we have nothing left over to actually run ad campaigns during periods of time where people have greater purchase intent or greater urgency to register and things like that. So just always in the back of your head kind of think, put yourself in your buyer's perspective. Would I ultimately purchase right now given all the context that I could think of? If I wouldn't purchase right now, maybe you should be focusing on doing something like an event RSVP campaign and just spending a little low budget just to kind of start building up social proof and attendance and saving more budget for a period a little later down the road. And when it comes to budget, y'all, you could rock with total or daily. Doesn't really make a difference. It's whatever accounting wise makes it a little bit easier for you. But generally, we will tell you about the minimum budget. So let's say I put $5 in here. It says, the minimum budget is $24 a day. This minimum budget is determined by how many audiences you have. So if you rock with the simple targeting, minimum budget's just $2 a day. If you did what kind of I did in this advanced section and we had like 4 audiences in here, our minimum budget is going to be $4 a day for this ad campaign. But I would recommend try to spend a little bit more than the minimum, and the reason for that is how much you spend is directly correlated with how many people you reach. So you spend more, you reach more people. The more people you reach, the more data Facebook and Instagram actually get on what's working, what's not working, how should we optimize this. And they're pretty crazy with it too. Like I've ran campaigns where, I left the target demo open completely. I know my demo was a little bit younger than I was targeting anyway, but then I found after a couple dollars worth of ad spend, it's not showing my ad to anybody in like the 45 and up category. So you don't really need to micromanage it. A lot of times it's better give Facebook a little room to breathe, give it some space to work with, and it will handle that for you. So again, bare minimum budget's just like $1 a day per audience you're working, but what a recommended would be is try to spend maybe closer to like $5 a day per audience. So the budget that I had in here, ideally if I had infinite budget to probably work with, I'd probably want to do like a daily budget of around $20 a day just to ensure I was reaching a lot of people. But if I had to rock with the bare minimum, I could theoretically spend only $4 a day here. And then skipping over to this next section, this, y'all, is simply where we are customizing what we actually want our ad to look like within this section. And you can see that we kind of pulled in the default image that was associated with the Eventbrite event already. So if you basically chose your Eventbrite event or your Facebook event, we'll automatically pull in an image for you. So you might not need to change it up. Those of you that might have done a little Facebook advertising in the past, you'd be like, Sam, why do you gotta have something with text on here? Doesn't Facebook have a crazy vendetta against text? They used to, but they realized all of us in the event space, we don't really have a lot of other stuff to work with sometimes than flyers with text on it. So it's totally fine if you use more text-heavy flyers, the stuff that you already have. It used to be kind of a no-no in the past, but it's totally fine for you to work with now. So in a lot of cases, you might not need to change up the image that you have in here. And then we'll also pull in, a little bit of sample text to kind of build this for you based on your event. But I'd highly encourage y'all, feel free to just delete what we have in this post text section. This is what shows up kind of above the ad when people see it. You probably want to put something in here that's actually using the voice of your own brand. It's a little bit more engaging than this kind of robotic copy. You can roll with this if you want. It's giving people the main info, like the who, what, when, where, essentially. But ultimately, people would probably interact with your ad better if you made it a little bit more fun. Sounded like the language was actually coming from your brand, so it resonates with your customers a little bit better. And then you can always add fun stuff in like emojis as well. There's a little button for you to hit this. But for those of you that are on Macs, if you don't know this, you can also hit Control, Command, and Space. Once again, that is Control, Command, and Space. If you hit them all at the same time, it pulls up an emoji keyboard. It might seem a little bit silly, but it's just a great visual attention-grabbing element that's in your campaign that'll help diversify your content from the other hundreds of feet that people are scrolling through every single day when they're on these social media platforms. And then link description or link headline, just generally trying to give somebody a little info on like, why would I click on this event? Why would I interact with it? Kind of what's going on. Link description, this doesn't even show up in like half the network placements anymore, but you're kind of just describing like what is somebody getting themselves into if they hit this buy tickets button. So generally you want to say something like click here to get your tickets or click here to register, or click here to buy your ticket. It doesn't really matter as much. And then the call to action is, what's the button that people see when they actually swipe up on the ad or they interact with it. Generally, if you're selling tickets, go ahead and use the buy tickets one. It's by far the best one to use. may seem like a little bit of a shotgun sell, but it by far the most impactful one for you to use. But we have a variety of ones in here as well. And then lastly, if you're maybe spending a little bit more than the minimum budget, you always can do a little bit of A/B testing, adding in extra variations. If I'm being real, you probably don't really need to A/B test any of these text components, as it's probably the last thing people are paying attention to. We are very like visual focused learners here. So generally, if you are to A/B test anything, I'd suggest add in like an image or video. If you happen to have it, you could add in two images, you could add in a video, and then if we ended up adding in like a secondary image here, so if I chose like another image that we had right here, basically it'll spin up a campaign with two versions of the creative. Depending on which one's performing better, that's where the budget will be allocated. So if there's anything to A/B test, I'd say just kind of stick to images or videos. And kind of by default, this ad campaign would run on like Facebook desktops, mobile, Instagram stream, and Instagram story. But if you see right here, we kind of had this like, landscape image for IG story that doesn't look as professional. If you happen to have the vertical 1080 by 1920p dimension asset that you'd want to use for stories, you could always click on this pen icon, and then it would allow you to change up like the crop or the image, or if you're using a video, kind of the thumbnail or the video on the different network placements. So if we had something specific for IG stories that we wanted to incorporate here, we could go ahead and select that, and that would make sure that on IG stories we're actually running with that specific creative here in this section, and then we're using that other image or video that we effectively have on the other network placements. And y'all, that pretty much is it for the design ad step, which is actually the last step of creating your campaigns. So if you're always, not quite ready to build your campaign, or ultimately would even want to save this to kind of use as like a template for spinning up new campaigns, you can always save things as a draft here within this section, and you can find those campaigns within the drafts area. And the nice thing is once you built a couple campaigns, the workflow should speed up exponentially for you. As a lot of times you're kind of not reinventing the wheel, but all you might be doing is hitting a duplicate button, copying that same campaign and just spinning up a new campaign where maybe you're switching the event. You're maybe making, maybe your venue's not moving, it's in the same place, you're running it from all the same accounts, so we can just skip past these. Maybe you're making a tiny little tweak to your target audiences, and then you're setting like a new schedule and budget, and then maybe you're just changing up a little bit of subtle language or switching up a video in your creative, but then boom, you have a new campaign running in around like 2 to 3 minutes here in this section. So just wanted to let you know that as you build more campaigns within this platform as well, it's really designed to help speed up the process for you. But y'all, that was pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about today. I know we went through a ton of information, so just wanted to take a quick sec before we end for today to answer kind of any of your questions that you have, or any feedback personally that you have for me of things that we could cover in future weeks that might be a little bit more beneficial for your learning, or things that you'd be interested in learning about as well. But I just wanted to thank all of you. I know your time's incredibly valuable. I know you have a lot going on, and it really means a lot to us that you spent your time here actually, really invested in learning a lot of this stuff today, asking questions, leaving comments in the chat. I always love it. So again, I really appreciate you taking your time, and it really means a lot to us as well. Just give it a quick more second to see if we have any questions in here. So is there an easy way to see the outcome of the ad easily? So once you've actually ran the ad campaign, let's just backtrack kind of over to another example. So let's switch over to here for a customer that kind of actually had, results for the campaign. And we can also take this as like a quick second to kind of explain like how does this tracking even work too? Especially, and by the way, this will be on the YouTube channel for the replay. So if you just check back on the YouTube channel, this stuff will 100% be in here. There's also other previous sessions where I covered other stuff, and let me also drop the table of contents. There is like a playlist as well too that I have videos going extremely in depth. It's also in our help center as well that I just linked in the chat, like tons and tons of information going into all of this stuff, more context too as well. Just if there's anything you're more curious about, I have like a really good like half-hour long video really talking through like auditing, how to understand these. So you might even want to check that out too before you start building campaigns. You'd kind of understand like, okay, really what's everything that goes into it. But getting back to your question of, like how would we kind of see, is there an easy way to see the outcome of the ads? So basically the way that you would see kind of purchases being tied back to your campaign, the way that this operated in the past was through something called the Facebook pixel. So don't worry if you don't know what it is. Basically, it was a tiny little piece of code, and we handle this automatically for you if you run ad campaigns in our platform. That once you kind of got this little piece of code on like your website or your Eventbrite ticketing pages, you could know if somebody kind of clicked on my ad and then bought within 7 days, or somebody kind of just viewed my ad. Maybe they Googled concerts near me, went to your ticketing page and purchased a $30 ticket, that kind of $30 ticket purchase will be recorded and tied back to the ad campaign. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard about kind of the recent Apple iOS changes, but basically Apple introduced something on their new Apple devices that anybody kind of downloading a new application, whenever they open it for the first time, they're prompted, do you want to deny tracking as the primary option or accept tracking? So basically what ended up happening is when they rolled out this update, we've seen like around 90% of people actually on Apple devices kind of opting out of this type of tracking, which broke this revenue tracking mechanism. So what we ended up coming up with at Eventbrite Boost that's kind of a unique mechanism just to us is something called offline tracking. And the way that it works is if somebody basically purchases for one of your Eventbrite events and they use that same email on Facebook or Instagram, we can actually tie that purchase back to your ad campaign. So we have a really cool, unique revenue tracking mechanism that really isn't available to pretty much anybody else so far, just to help you track some of these purchases. This user right here, for example, had both of those kind of tracking mechanisms going. So they had their pixel on their pages, and then they had this offline tracking going as well. So previously in the past, in my honest opinion, it could have been that, maybe Facebook over-reported the amount of purchases if you were using a wide window, but now it actually seems like they're almost under-reporting. So we'll try to show you any of this, and we'll like prompt you on the platform to even get that stuff set up if you haven't done it. But if you do have that return on ad spend, even if it's not as big as what this user, this is definitely a standout. They're a really high performer here. Average return on ad spend nowadays is in like the 1 to kind of 3x range. So if you're not seeing anything crazy, don't worry, as odds are there's probably a lot of purchases that could be happening or resulting that just unfortunately due to people opting out of this tracking or even using like a different email for Eventbrite ticket purchasing and then Facebook and Instagram, it might not record those purchases. But we try to show you other metrics as well, even if you don't have straight up purchase, just to understand like what's going on. So like, even if we didn't have this, we still reached around, 30,000 people in this section. Based on the engagement and interaction, we had, 1,000 new people in our remarketing audience that we could maybe hit at a point a little later down the road as we're closer. So we'll always try to give you a breakdown of, what are like the primary objectives for your campaign, and based on how it's performed, what are kind of like the main performance elements for you to assess things on. And then we'll also kind of give you a breakdown of, if you chose to hit a couple different target audiences, like which audiences actually ended up driving the most purchases. So we could kind of see here that, that group remarketing audience we were talking about that had like your past buyers, Facebook event engagers, page, Instagram engagers, that was actually the audience that drove the majority of the purchases here. And then, this interest audience going after new people that didn't really drive anything was actually the one that got kind of the lowest amount of the budget here within the mix. So we really try to have good A/B testing as well to empower you to maybe try things that are a little bit out of the ordinary that you wouldn't target, so you could rest easy knowing if it doesn't work, most of the budget's not going to go to it anyways, and then I actually walk away with some good learnings that maybe I don't need to include that audience in future campaigns. Maybe it's better if I work with other ones. And then kind of down towards the bottom, this is where we'll give basically a breakdown of the creative. So kind of like the combination of the target audience and the creative that you were using here in this section, which is kind of referred to as the ad. So you can even see kind of a breakdown by ad of, which ones perform better if you were A/B testing, or basically that breakdown on the target audience perspective as well. And then down towards the bottom, we just try to like also estimate, like, with running your campaign from us, with this budget optimization, if you had just rolled with evenly applying your budget across these audiences, like how much more did we make via automation as well? So just trying to even give you a little insight of like how is this product providing value to you in addition to all the campaigns and time-saving elements as well. But those were kind of the main things, at least in regards to performance. I hope I answered your question there, brother. Was there anything I could kind of better give you a little bit of context on here before we jump? I think we are pretty much just about wrapped today, but just want to see if anybody has any last minute questions before we hop off. Awesome, everybody. Well, I just wanted to thank you all once again. My name has been Sam with the Eventbrite Boost team here. We do this every Thursday, so if there's any questions or something pops up a little bit later, like feel free to come back here at same place, same time next week. We love doing these. I really appreciate all of you taking your time, asking a ton of questions, and I hope you, at the very least, if you weren't doing a ton of paid marketing stuff, I hope you walk away with some really good kind of free tools that you can better be using to, do what you love to do and empower and bring people together with your event. So, everybody, thank you so much. Have yourselves a blessed rest of your Thursday, a fantastic Friday, and a great weekend as well. My name has been Sam. Take care, everybody. I hope you have a great week.